have a little good news for you today. At least I think these are two feel-good stories. One's out of Tanzania and one's out of Madagascar. Because these leaders are standing up for their people, and these leaders are saying things that I think everyone around the world would want to hear. Unless, of course, they're all locked up in the cult of progressivism or the cult of scientism or have TDS or whatever. These two stories, for the rest of us, for the real people out there, are awesome. Okay, let's start with Tanzania and a clip of Dr. John Magufuli, president of Tanzania, talking about what he discovered when he tested the testers in his home country. He sent samples to the lab in Tanzania to be tested for COVID-19, and the results are kind of shocking. After this 4-minute, approximately, clip, I'll come back and talk a little bit more about it, including what the reaction out there in the world was to him.
Tukachukua sample za mbuzi, tukachukua sample za kondoo, tukachukua sample za papai, tukachukua sample za oili ya gari na sample za vitu vingine mbalimbali, tukavipeleka pale kwenye maabara bila wao kujua. Ya papai tukaipa jina Elizabeth Anne, miaka 26, female. Papai lile lilikuwa positive kwamba lina corona. Maana yake maji mle ndani zilizotolewa mle kwenye papai ni positive. Tulipeleka sample ya ndege Kware, imekuwa positive. Tumepeleka sungura, ikawa determinant. Kwa hiyo ukishagundua kitu hiki, lazima ujue kuna mchezo wa ajabu unafanyika kwenye vipimo hivi, kwamba kuna mambo ya ajabu yanafanywa katika nchi hii. Either wahusika wa laboratory ile wamenunuliwa na mabeberu, either hawana utaalamu, which is not true, kwa sababu maabara hii imetumika sana kwenye magonjwa mengine. Either zile sample zinazoletwa, kwa sababu mpaka reagent zinatoka nje, mpaka zile swap, zile vipamba vya kuweka kwenye nani mle vinatoka nje. Kwa hiyo lazima kuna kitu fulani kinafanywa. Kwa hiyo kuna watu, kutokana na extrapolation ya hizi information nilizonazo, lazima kuna watu wameambiwa positive wakati si wagonjwa wa corona, na inawezekana wengine wakafa kwa hofu. Kwa hiyo natoa wito kwa Watanzania, msiwe na hofu. Lazima pawe na maswali mengi ya kujiuliza sisi kama Watanzania, lakini na dunia na Afrika nzima lazima ijiulize vizuri katika tatizo hili la ugonjwa, kwamba kuna kitu fulani ambacho inawezekana hakijaeleweka kwa Watanzania na kwa wanasayansi, lakini inawezekana hata duniani hawajakielewa. Tanzania, tusimame imara, tushikamane, tumtangulize Mungu wetu, tuchape kazi, tusiogopane, tusaidiane ili tatizo hili tuondoke. Na wale wanaoendelea kufanya mbinu za kijingajinga kama hizi ambazo nimezisema, kwamba papai nalo lina corona, Kware ana corona, mbuzi ana corona, ni lazima katika scientific approaches watu lazima wafanye kazi. Ni waombe wataalamu wetu, vyuo vikuu, Sokoine, University of Dar es Salaam, vyuo vyote, NEMRI na kadhalika. Huu ndio wakati wa kufanya kazi na kuonyesha integrity zenu za kufanya research kwa sasa. Sina uhakika sana na mkuu wa maabara hii kama anafahamu, kwa sababu hata tulipokuwa tunapeleka zile sample hatakumjulisha. Yeye amepima akijua ni sample za binadamu. Lakini kwa nini na yeye hakufanya trial kwenye siku za nyuma ili kujustify kile kifaa anachokitumia? Kwa hiyo kuna mambo mengi ya ovyo ovyo humu ndani.
Okay, so pretty shocking stuff, wouldn't you say? A papaya tested positive, and what was it? A goat and other things. I have cut about half of that speech out, but I will link to it in the description box so you can hear the whole thing. It is worth listening to him because he's got other things to say in there, including calling out the WHO, calling out the World Health Organization a little bit for their failures to do anything about this. And he mentions that something is really wrong. He asks, are his people in the lab being bought off? Perhaps, is there something wrong with the supplies, the reagents, the swabs that he is importing into his country to do the tests with? He's saying he doesn't trust any of it. And so that to me is very interesting. Now, the reaction out there in the world, of course, is not to say, wow, Tanzania found some really big problems with these tests that raise a lot of questions. No, what they did was, of course, a smear job on Magufuli. First, because he is a Christian and he talks about God quite a bit, as he did in that speech. That was another thing I loved. Magufuli told his people not to worry, not to be afraid, that they could beat it, that they were smart, that they have potential cure, which they're going to be getting from Tanzania. But they also have herbal remedies in their own country that are being effective. He told them to come together and not to be defeatist. He said people that are getting diagnosed as positive might die of worry when really the tests don't even work. So I really like this man. I think he's very strong. I think he's very sensible. And it bothers me all the time to see good people like this be smeared in the paper. But that's basically what The Guardian does. Instead of addressing the flawed tests, they go after the man. They criticize him in a roundabout way for his religion. We all know that Christians in the West, the left half of the political spectrum is just triggered as soon as you mention anything to do with Christianity. So they go after his religion. They compare him to Trump, not just once, 3 times in one article. And they say that he's just modeling his response off of other populist leaders. Well, that has nothing to do with anything. Were the tests flawed or not? Guardian. The Guardian journalists, as usual, don't care at all. I think I'll leave that part there. Who cares what The Guardian really has to say, really, right? But I just want you to be aware that nobody is taking it seriously. And I wonder how many of you have even heard that story yet. All right, so Magufuli is intending on getting herbal remedies from neighboring Madagascar. So let's look at that story quickly. Madagascar launches miracle drink for coronavirus infection. By the way, YouTube censors, I should say, I am covering this story. I am not myself recommending any sort of treatment or cure for this virus. I don't know. And I am not a doctor, and I am not giving medical advice. I am covering a news story that happened in Madagascar. Okay? Thank you, YouTube censors. I don't know if that'll work. So this story, the president of Madagascar, his name is Andry Rajoelina, and he is coming onto the world stage saying that his country, he believes his country has found a cure for coronavirus. And the company is called COVID Organics. It is a natural herbal tea. And maybe you in the West have not even heard about it. They did have a segment on France 24 with the president. It was a fairly lengthy segment where they talked to him about this cure and about his opinions about the World Health Organization and all of that. It's very interesting. I will link to that in the description box, but in the meantime, I have cut out some sections for you to watch today.
Measures, Madagascar has set itself apart by its use of COVID Organics, a remedy based on Artemisia, a plant with proven therapeutic effects in the fight against malaria. You've already sent it to a number of African countries, but do you have proof in Madagascar that this treatment works?
What evidence can we provide at this point? Well, our patients are healing. Out of 171 infections in Madagascar, as many as 105 have healed. That's a majority of COVID-19 patients who have healed. You mentioned evidence. What I can tell you is that the patients that have healed have taken no other product than COVID organics. To summarize, we are seeing a clear improvement in the health of patients treated with this remedy called Tambavi CVR, and this only 24 hours after the remedy was first administered. The patients are found to heal 7 to 10 days after receiving the remedy. It is a natural remedy, a non-toxic and non-invasive remedy.
Nevertheless, Mr. President, not everyone is convinced by the evidence that you're talking about. And it's not just anyone who's skeptical. The African Union, ECOWAS, and especially the WHO, the WHO's Africa office, have in the past few days repeatedly warned against the illusion of a miracle cure. Not only does the WHO have doubts as to the effectiveness of COVID organics, but it is also worried about the possible side effects for those who take this tonic.
Well, you are referring to Dr. Moetsi's warning against the use of COVID organics. I have a question for you. Wasn't there another medication called Mediator that received all of the necessary marketing authorizations? My question for you is, how many people did Mediator kill? You're all familiar with the statement by Professors Bernard Debré and Philip Even. These professors introduced over 58 medications manufactured by prestigious laboratories. And according to them, not only do these drugs have zero healing effect, but they're also dangerous, if not lethal. These drugs have been and are being marketed in Africa, and I have never heard Dr. Moetsi or WHO issue statements banning the use of these drugs. This being said, we use a tonic, a decoction. In other words, we brew medicinal herbs in boiling water in order to extract the active ingredients. That's our traditional medicine. It is famous and recognized because it works. We are here. Questions abound, yes, but what is the problem with COVID organics? Really? Could it be that this product comes from Africa? Could it be that it's not okay for a country like Madagascar, which is the 63rd country, poorest country in the world, that it's not okay for such a poor country to have come up with Tambavi that can help save the world? Remember, we are at war. But in this war cannot be won by military might or economic power. It is God who gave us these medicinal plants to help our country and help the rest of the world against this disease.
He really knew what he was talking about, especially when he countered that guy's questions about side effects and testing. He made that comment about the French drug Mediator. Servier, the drug's manufacturer, is accused of deceiving users over the killer side effects of a drug later used to treat overweight diabetics. Evil. And they have the nerve to ask Andrew Rogelina with a straight face whether his herbal remedy tea is going to hurt people with its side effects. Rogelina also mentioned these professors who came out, and this was in 2012. These top French medical specialists say half of the drugs sold in France are, quote, useless or bad for patients' health. The pair blame pressure from the pharmaceuticals industry for keeping superfluous drugs on the market at huge expense, and also having drugs that actually hurt people. They said about 5% of the drugs were actively harmful. So, yeah, I wonder how much longer this hypocrisy can last, especially if Madagascar's COVID-19 tea, what was it called? COVID organics, if it is effective. If it is effective, then they're going to have a hard time convincing everybody that Big Pharma's way to go is really the way to go. So I can see why these stories are getting kind of buried out there. You know, I really enjoyed listening to both men because they just talked like normal people, common sense people, to me, to my ears. They didn't have this polished, simpering, whining, progressive, talking point filled diatribe that they went on. Like most of our, Trudeau certainly does, Macron, Merkel, Boris, they're all just reading scripts. And are those scripts prepared possibly by the same people behind this, just trying to stop natural cures from getting out? Namely the World Health Organization, namely all these foundations that make a lot of money when there isn't a real cure, namely all these pharmaceutical companies. I don't know. But it was so good to hear Andre Rajoelina, again, he talked about God. He talked about natural remedies being a cure from God, a gift from God to his country. And I think that's part of what the progressives and the scientist cult people, these phony experts, I believe that's part of what they hate about the messages coming out of Africa right now. And it's certainly part of what I love about the messages coming out of Africa right now. There he is there. Andre Rajoelina. I really enjoyed what he had to say. And in the panel, though, this guy asked him not only about side effects, but he also said the WHO and African Union have raised doubts about how well this COVID tea works on patients. And, you know, Andre Rajoelina gave the evidence. His patients are being cured. Patients are being cured. But also, when you look into this Artemisia plant and the history of it, it's really shocking that the WHO would say anything like that. However, they have. Here is the World Health Organization raising doubts on May 4th. So right away, right after the president of Madagascar came out talking about his country's cure or remedy for the virus, the WHO put out this statement. Look how they sell this to the public, though. They say, WHO recognizes that traditional, complementary, and alternative medicine has many benefits, and Africa has a long history of traditional medicine and practitioners that play an important role in providing care to populations. Medicinal plants such as Artemisia annua are being considered for possible treatments for COVID-19 and should be tested for efficacy and adverse side effects. Africans deserve to use medicines tested to the same standards as people in the rest of the world. That's the part that makes me laugh. Africans deserve to use medicines tested to the same standards as people in the rest of the world. That makes it sound like the rest of the world has something figured out that Africa doesn't, number one. And number two, it makes it sound like Westerners are at all appreciative of the treatments they're getting when we are blocked from getting so many treatments that we would like to have, or we are forced into possibly taking vaccines. That's the standard, I guess, the WHO wants to impose on Africa. But it has a problem because it acknowledges, in part of its virtue signaling frenzy, traditional remedies, right? I'm sure that's why it did it. I'm sure it didn't do it because it actually wants Africans to use traditional remedies. No, it wants big pharma in there. But In either case, it's very, very curious and disingenuous for the WHO, the World Health Organization, to pretend that this is some kind of new thing. Because when you look up Artemisia, they've known about it since the 4th century. Now, obviously not the World Health Organization, because it's only been around for 75 years or something like that. But this has been a known about treatment since the 4th century. And then it has quite a fascinating history going through to when it was accepted as a cure for malaria in 1973. I say it's very interesting because it all started with Project 523 out of Vietnam and China, which blew my mind when I found that out, because if you recall from my last video, that's where the whistleblower, Rick Bright, and Wellcome Trust head, Jeremy Farrar, both did their studies. They were both in Vietnam pretty much at the same time, trying to look for a cure for malaria. Well, I just showed you they had it from way back in the 70s. Tu Youyou won the Nobel Prize for it in 2015. It's an interesting story, and there's more to it, but I'm going to leave this one here today because I want everyone to remember the two heroes, in my opinion, that are standing up for their people in Tanzania and Madagascar. John Magufuli and Andry Rajoelina. These guys are two of my new heroes. All right, everybody, I'm going to stop talking now. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave me a thumbs up. Leave me a comment. I love to read your comments, as many as I can anyway. Subscribe if you haven't. And if you'd like to say thank you for the work that I've done so far, you can send me a tip to my PayPal. The address is in the description box. Also, I have a post office box which you can send snail mail to. No courier, please. It will not accept any courier. Just regular post. That address you can find on my website, amazingpolly.net, on the contact page. And I guess you could follow me on Twitter. You could subscribe to my backup video channel, which is over on BitChute. And I look forward to coming back again soon with something to say thank you for all the mail and emails and everything that you've given back to this channel. I want to do that for you very soon. So until next time, peace out.